and action it is. So, uh, judging by what we have here today, I challenge you to guess the topic that I want to discuss about and what I want to chime in just for like a little bit, right? Granted, I have to give credit where credit is due because a couple of days ago, actually, I think it's almost like 1 week at this point, I saw these two videos uploaded by RVJ. Shout out to RVJ, and yeah, it was like just like RVJ said, he was kicking this dead horse in terms of a topic about PEDs, and he kind of wanted to lay it to rest, but I obviously do not want to lay it to rest because I still think that there are a lot of things to be said, and unfortunately, I want to still keep kicking on this dead horse for a while. So yeah, sorry, horsey, but I feel compelled to do this. So yeah, I first and foremost want to say that this video is under no circumstance meant to like encourage hate or vice versa usage or whatever. It's not about finger pointing people. It's not about blaming people. I just want to have like a sort of an open discussion and a civilized discussion with you guys. I'm recommending you to drop in the comment section below and let me know what you think on this whole matter. That's why I think, first of all, this video is going to be long because I have a lot of things to discuss, and sorry for the background noise, but I have my other computer running in parallel because I have like a list of notes because I don't want to forget anything. And I'm pretty sure that this will just be probably the beginning, so it's just going to be like part one, because probably if people get triggered, although I don't want them to get triggered in the wrong way. But anyway, if it creates any sort of buzz, I'm absolutely sure that I'll come back with a follow up after follow up. So without further ado, let's dive right into this. So first of all, RVJ discussed about PEDs, and in my opinion, the word is very important. It's PEDs. Obviously, it's the acronym for performance enhancing drugs or enhancement drugs. And the reason why I think this is very important is because, historically, in the classical sense, we were just used to saying, hey, steroids, steroids. And a lot of people have found a lot of ways to like avoid questions, avoid discussions, avoid difficult answers, and even avoid testing and whatever, just because of the misuse and misconception of what steroids are. So that's why I'm not going to be talking about steroids. I'll be talking about PEDs in general, because it's very easy to say I'm not doing steroids just because you're doing a shitload of compounds that are just not classified under the steroid section from a biochemical, let's say, criterion or whatever. So that's first thing that I want to mention. Now, second thing that I want to mention is that, well, let's say that we kind of have, when it comes to this discussion, and it's not just for arm wrestling, it's for athletes in general. When we have this debate over, is it moral, is it cheating, is it whatever, obviously we have the same good old-fashioned things that are coming up in the first microsecond, which is, yeah, well, what everyone is doing, so blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to go down that route because it's heavily exploited by this point. What I want to say is that, in my opinion, there are kind of like three types of of users when it comes to PEDs. So on one hand, you have the guys who not only would they use and start using and continue using and abusing any of these substances if no one else around them would, and it wouldn't even endanger their placement, because let's say by some miracle all of the other guys on the planet would be absolutely clean. So not only would they still use under these circumstances, but actually this is what tickles their funny bone, and this is what gets them started in the first place. They want to have the advantage. They want to have the upper hand, the leverage, the edge. So it's in their best interest to use when no one else is using, right? So in my opinion, in my book, I kind of call them the trend setters, right? Because they are the ones who will ultimately dictate basically the other two types of users, who are kind of like they're being born out of the premises established by the first type of users, which are these trendsetters. So the second type is let's say somewhere a bit further away, but not on the opposite side of the spectrum, and it's the so-called, let's say willing followers. So they don't especially have a hard stance, whether it's pro or against, but as soon as they come in contact with the idea, they don't have too many problems or moral issues or whatever, and also they're not like fanatics going all in. So they're like these people who like to experiment. They want to see what benefits it brings. They want to enjoy it for a while. Maybe they'll fall off the wagon a few years down the line. But they, like I said, they're kind of riding the wave. If someone introduces them to like the next level of performance, whether they're just gym rats or not just gym rats, but athletes in any sports field or whatever, they're willing to give it a go. So they're followers because they're not like the first category of setters, trendsetters, but also they are willing because it's they don't have this thing where they're obliged, or they see themselves surrounded by people who are using and they have no other choice. It's like a super voluntary decision, because ultimately all of the decisions are voluntary, but you get my point. And now we go to the let's say other end of the spectrum when it comes to followers, because the other end of the spectrum period would be not using, but I'm talking about users here. So the opposite end of the usage spectrum would be people who are unwilling followers. And what I mean by this is people who would really want to see their sport cleaned up and nobody using anything. They really don't like the health consequences that are coming, that are being associated. They just hate it, but because they're so far into the game and they're like top tiers, or maybe not even top tiers, but contending to be up there, they're constituting this group of people who have no choice. And again, I won't beat the waters too much on this subject, because we all know about these guys who unfortunately have to, just because everyone else is on something. But I just wanted to make like a clear separation, because in my opinion, like the mindset and the psychology that drives you in kind of is like A or B or somewhere in between. So that's why I'm making like these three distinct groups. So having this in mind, I want to go a bit further and just very slightly touch upon this idea that we see these monsters, these genetic aliens, freaks, call them whatever, and people always say that, well, when it comes to sports, which ultimately is like a form of entertainment. It always was and will probably always be. Um, the majority of people will always want to see the freak show, right? So they want to see the freaks, the dinosaurs, the aliens, whatever. Well, you have to consider that already with PEDs. You can no longer tell what exactly is a freak or a genetic monster or alien or whatever, because countless times we've seen people who, let's say, well, almost nobody nowadays is being caught, just with very few exceptions through testing, whatever. We're catching people, and now we're finger pointing those guys like they're the baddest of the bunch. But in reality, 90+% of the users never get caught. But what I wanted to say was that we all know, without naming any names, because like I said, that's not the point. But we all know of people, and it doesn't just need to be, again, in arm wrestling. You can look throughout the whole field of sports, or even not even professional sports, even acting, movies, Hollywood, whatever. We've all seen these guys who got to become like freaks, aliens, whatever, and now everyone is looking at them, and they're like these ginormous individuals with with features that are just shouting, giants of the past, like mythical creatures and whatever. But when you look back into their early years and childhood and whatever, and even adulthood, they were absolutely normal people. Like a lot of these guys were actually guys who were like me, very thin, athletic, wiry type of individuals who actually became monsters. Why? Just because with PEDs, what we call genetics, when you look at a guy's constitution and let's say anthropomorphic data, wrist size, bone size, frame, whatever, you can look at me and say, well, genetically you'll never be like a giant or whatever, but allow me to argue with you by saying that I kind of probably, but you never know until you actually try all these substances, but it is my conviction that a lot of such normal thin whatever individuals actually just do not have their genetic material fully expressed, because they haven't trained whatever, but also because biochemically their composition has not yet been aroused, let's say. And once you jump on those substances, on the gear, all of a sudden you are seeing your genes respond in ways that no one would have ever thought, including yourself. And you all of a sudden start having changes, not just in your muscle build, but with everything, like organs, frame, like I said, bone mass, whatever. You just completely transform. So again, when people are saying genetic freaks versus non-genetic freaks, just look in bodybuilding. Like those guys are like a prime example of how much of a transformation PEDs can inflict. It's not just like genetic, like whenever you look at individuals, you kind of see, you know, and here I mean PD users, you kind of see like 90% of their genetics already on the table, and you have that final polishing, like a lot of people like to dress it up as. You see that 5 to 10%, which gives you the competitive edge. No, maybe for some people it's like that, but they're a minority. For the majority of users, actually the transformations are ridiculous, redonkulous. It's like, even like you know, with numbers in the gym, like it's not just like I was pressing 300 and all of a sudden now I'm pressing 350 or 4. Nah, it's you're like pressing 150 and you can easily double, if not more. I've seen guys doing this also within a very short span. Their strength just doubled, for some of them even tripled almost, with a lot of things. And no, it's not because of newbie gains. They were like experienced athletes, right? So let's not downplay the multiplying factor that PEDs have in this whole thing, right? So yeah, again, when it's about freaks and genetic monsters and whatever, nowadays you can no longer know. I mean, yeah, obviously it's still the genetics inside the individual that's responding to the substances, to the cocktail and whatever, but when you look at people like these, you can no longer assume that they were always predisposed to being generally big. Like I said, some of them, if you look a few years back into their history, they were like super average individuals with normal frames and whatever. So yeah, that's that. Also, you know, this kind of ticks me off. People talk about genetics like, well, yeah, they are using, but still they were blessed with great genetics in the first place. Let me tell you something. When you are seeing massive improvement in your size, in your volume, in your mass, in your numbers, in your overall performance and looks, and you're saying, yeah, but you had great genetics to begin with because that's why they respond to the drugs. Well, you have to ask yourself, what is genetics? Because if indeed you had the genetics to respond to the drugs, but without the drugs, you were like John Doe, the average Joe on the street, or you were, let's say, very mediocre in your sports, in your performance, in your whatever, it means that still not having those, you know, endogenous substances secreted by your own body, which is like everything from, I don't know, testosterone, all sorts of steroidal compounds, you know, growth hormone, you know, IGF factor 1, 2, whatever, insulin. I don't care. All of these things that kind of have the this synergistic effect on the body. When you're not having that naturally, and you're saying, yeah, well, but I have great genetics to respond to those things, you have to understand that, first of all, the reason why you're responding to them is because naturally within your system, you're having those substances. It's just a little bit of an off topic. Whenever you're responding to you know, any sort of substance that you're bringing from the outside, if you're really responding to it and you have you know, let's say great response from intaking those substances, it's because you have receptors in your body. And the reason why you have receptors in your body, it's not just because your body was waiting for mankind to invent something to put it in your body, but that thing was there to begin with, either in your body or in Mama Nature. Let's call it like that. So that's what happens with alcohol, with drugs, with tobacco, with everything. Back to our discussion. You cannot say you have great genetics for responding if you have shit genetics, which do not provide you with those substances in good enough quantities. And yeah, I know you'll never have, let's say naturally, you'll never have the same amount of levels as the I just did the cupping thing. Weird. You'll never have the same levels as you can obtain by bringing exogenous sources, but still, if you have great genetics for responding, and if you would have great genetics for having those things inside of you already, you'll probably be one of those outliers who never need to touch anything, and they're still world champions. They're still winning competitions and smoking everyone. Like, again, they're outliers. They're very, very few. But again, on one hand, we're saying everyone is using, but still, you have to consider that there are really genetic freaks, and those people who want to say that they're genetically gifted, in my opinion, you cannot say so unless you have the whole package. You cannot say I have great genetics for responding to things, but unfortunately I have poor genetics with low testosterone or low whatever, blah, 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 blah. And I need to bring the other things from the outside to compensate. That's no longer great genetics. That's average genetics. You have good genetics here, bad genetics there. So you're pretty much like the average Joe who doesn't have the best genetics in terms of responding, but he also has, let's say, pretty much decent levels of all these juices flowing throughout his body from like birth, whatever. So when it comes to genetics, don't throw that card on the table unless you have the whole package. Otherwise, you do not qualify, at least in my book, as being genetically superior in any way, shape, or form, right? So that is that. And yeah, I wanted to like make just a stupid analogy because I know you all know about this, but when people say about when people talk about, well, is it moral, is it legal, is it whatever, is it fair, is it cheating, let's put it into perspective. And here I'm kind of sliding back into what RVJ was talking about, and that is, in my opinion, I'll make an analogy with income. So let's say you and me, we both have the same job for the same company and whatever, and we're putting in the exact same amount of effort each and every day. But if at the end of the month I'm walking out with $1,000 and you're walking out with $2,000, $3,000, whatever, are you telling me that people in my position, or let's just reverse the roles, I'm the one who's walking out with more money and you're the one that's drawing the short stick, will you tell me that you A, won't be pissed, B, won't try to change things, and C, eventually you won't really change things, which means either take it up with the management or eventually just quit and go elsewhere? It's the same here. So you cannot say that a guy who trains his ass off just as much as a PED user, or quite oftentimes a lot more than a PED user, you cannot tell me that the moment he feels disappointed, he feels down, he's questioning whether or not the sport is really made for him, or if he's made for this sport or whatever, all these doubts and whatever, you cannot tell me that these don't play a huge fucking factor when it comes to the overall results of this guy walking into a competition. And that's just like the short, you know, the short term effect. But actually, the long term effect is whether or not this guy will continue and possibly miss out on having a successful career just because he starts getting smoked by people who are new to the sport, and within 2 years they're just blasting through him while has been steadily progressing over the past 10 to 15 years. You cannot tell me that this is not something that we have to look at. And again, just like RVJ said, when you're talking about working hard and whatever, when I hear people saying, I'm taking, where people are taking this and that, but it's mostly the dedication and hard work and consistency and perseverance. Guess what, MF? It's so, I don't even want to say it's so easy. It transforms the whole world. You go from battling your inner emotions and life in general happening around you. You're going from battling all these things that are normally against you, and you're trying to win against the odds and make sacrifices and whatever. You're going from this, which is like every normal guy's situation. You're going from this into, now it pays off to train hard or even to overtrain, which normally puts you in severe detriment. And people now argue, well, there's no such thing as overtraining. Yes, there is, MF. If you wouldn't be on all these juices, you would see what actually overtraining does. In your case, it does wonders and it pays off. It's motivating. You can't wait for the next training. You can't wait for the next whatever, because everything that you do is working for you, not against you. Whenever you're pushing yourself, whenever you're creating those micro tears and whatever in sparring or in training session, all those things, the moment you start eating and going to bed, all those things just amplify themselves and create that surplus, which over time builds gradually into something that is, non-movable in terms of performance. You cannot fight that no more. You're becoming like a force to be reckoned with. And let me just give you an idea of just how much numbers come into play here. Forget what I said about PEDs making a shit ton of difference when it comes to, doubling or even more, your gains and whatever. Just think about 1%, just assuming for the sake of argument that the difference between a non-user and a user, just to make like some stupid math right here, is just 1% advantage, if you could ever quantify what 1% means, but you get the point, just for the sake of argument. Imagine that the only advantage you get is 1%. Now, let's look at this scenario. Let's say that by default, without using anything, you have, let's say, certain amount of resources, whether it's energy, fuel, protein, whatever, time. Let's pack them all into something called resources. Let's say you're using your resources 100% each day, each time you're training or whatever. And let's say that while doing this, you are kind of recovering from one day to another. You're recovering yourself 99%, which again is a stupid thing, because you should know that as a natural athlete. If you completely shit-face yourself training and you put it all on the table and you go 100% in, the next day you won't be 99%. You won't be 100%. You will be like in severe condition. You'll be like close to having to go to a clinic to have some procedures done to you just in order to aid you in opening a box of cookies or having a tea. So, but again, let's assume by default, by some miracle, you will be able to be back at 99% of where you were yesterday when you let it all on the table. You can pretty much see where I'm going with this. If you're doing this every day you'll be 99% of where you were yesterday. Guess what? It's only a matter of time until you will see what overtraining means, see that instead of going up, you're going down, you're starting to get injuries start to accumulate themselves, and so on and so forth. So guess what? Training hard and all that shit does not matter anymore. Actually, it does matter because it's working against you. Now, let's look at that 1% of a difference. That 1% of a difference means that every day at least you can be here. You're not better, you're not worse, you can continue doing what you're doing, and you're just gonna do great. Add 1 more percent, already from day to day you're improving. Within 365 days, it's not gonna be like 365% because it's 1% out of the previous percent, which accumulates whatever. My shoulder's popping, and you get the idea. This is just with like talking 1%. Now let's go back to our actual scenario where the percentages are huge. Can you see how, without using any steroids, within a matter of hours or days, it doesn't even have to be weeks, you can work yourself into the ground with injuries, with health problems, with overtraining in general, having a lot of bad, let's say, side effects. Whereas if you're starting to use things, now the equation goes in reverse, and now you have good side effects. Now everything pays off. So now you're healing, you're recuperating, you can add more, you can continually make PRs after PRs and whatever, and you're just on a ramp, you're on this ramp on your way to success. So again, with 1%, the situation is brutal. With the actual percent and whatever, varying from people to people, the difference is astronomical. So next time you're thinking about talking, about PEDs being just a slight edge advantage, or get the fuck out of here. Like, sorry, it completely changes the nature and the dynamics of your work that you're putting in versus the results that you're getting. And that was my elastic band. Hope I did not give you a heart attack. The elastic band, which I have here for training purposes, and I'm not using, as you can probably see, because work needs to be done before work can be done, and it goes like this from day to day. Anywho, so like I said, motivation becomes self-sustaining. You don't need to get motivated or be motivated. It's already an intrinsic part of your activity. If you're on PEDs, you can't wait to get more of the good things coming into your life because now everything pays off, right? So like I said, unfortunately this is very bad for guys who are getting smashed and now are thinking that probably the sport is not for them. Security and self-confidence and stuff like that is just thrown out the window because you're already starting to contemplate and doubt your whole existence, reasoning for ever going into the sport. you're wondering whether or not you made a complete mistake. Maybe ego took over, and you thought you were meant to do this, but apparently you don't have what it takes to do it, because other people are just drinking water, eating their rice and broccoli and chicken breast, and they're just smoking you within 1.5 years from ever walking into the sport, versus you, a veteran who has plateaued a long time ago. So all these things come into play, and like I said, it completely changes the equation, the situation, the movie that you're starring in, which is called, your athletic career, or even your life in general. Because if you've been doing this professionally and you're kind of making a living out of your sports, let's call them, I don't know, you get the point. If you're making a living out of your, if you're making a living with your body in a sports way, it's it has an impact on you, on your family, on the guys that are depending on you. Your income has to suffer. So now, after all this blah blah blah, now go back to my initial discussion with the unwilling followers. Are they so much to blame? I can't say, because saying that they're not so much to blame will automatically imply that I'm somehow condoning the usage under these circumstances, and this creates like this vicious backdoor for everyone else. So I don't really have a stance on this, but one thing I know for sure, that unfortunately I don't think once something gets created, invented, discovered, and it becomes a reality, like a part of life, competitive sports, in our case, and whatever, I don't think it can ever be eliminated. I just think it can be controlled, and possibly just severely, I don't even want to say punished, but because that's not something that's going to help. I'm just hoping that at one point that these things can become, unfortunately, legal, so that the guys who were just not admitting for legal reasons can walk out of their closets and say, yeah, I'm doing it. Because there's a lot of moral people out there who would say it, but they're just afraid of the legal aspects. Obviously there's the people who will never say it no matter what, but probably, I'm not sure if it would become legal, maybe people would say it, and now we would be able to no longer have repercussions for those athletes and strip them down of their medals and achievements, and we would just be able to have very normal, tested versus non-tested. They should all be tested, obviously, in order to know who's doing what. But just, competitions where everyone's using, competitions where nobody's using. Hopefully, if we ever manage to gain control of the situation with some sort of ways in which testing can no longer be manipulated, and you can no longer trick the tests by temporarily cleansing your body from the metabolites and whatever. So yeah, you'd have these two worlds. Obviously, you should always be allowed to go from like non-users and try your luck, your chances against users, but it should never be allowed to do the opposite, in my opinion. So anywho, this video is by far the longest at this point on the channel. Probably I'll have even longer ones in the future, who knows. But in the meantime, please guys, let me know if you ever get to see this video, because my channel is nothing at this point, 0 subscribers, right? So if this ever becomes like a thing and you're watching this video and you've watched it so far, congrats, really, honestly, you have my appreciation and respect. So let me know what you think about this this thing right here, especially when dealing with these things right here, which is arm wrestling. And let me know anything. Let me know your thoughts on any of the topics that I've discussed in this video, and especially the last part. What solution would you foresee, if there's ever any solution to be found? If not, how to deal with it in the meantime. So yeah, again, I hope you enjoyed it. Again, this is not about finger pointing. This is not about blaming people, because let's face it, probably, just saying, probably some of our most beloved heroes in whatever sport, quite possibly they're users, at least users, if not heavy users. So that shouldn't take anything away from them, and from the fact that we love them and appreciate them, and they've done so much for this sport, and they brought this sport and every other sport to the world, whether it's arm wrestling, whether it's fighting, football, basketball, bodybuilding, you name it. So yeah, it's just, like I said in the beginning, an open discussion, and I can't wait to hear your guys' thoughts on this whole subject, if you will. All right, so like I said, I will probably be making more videos on this topic. Probably this is just the first episode, but depending on your reaction, I might be doing follow-ups, or probably never talk about it ever again, just because no one's interested and nobody's seeing my channel anyway, and I'll just sink in YouTube's layer of obscure channels that never gain any traction for whatever reason. Well, I kind of have ideas why mine wouldn't, because I'm a nobody to begin with, but who knows. So yeah, I'll stop talking right now, for real.